I'll just start with a quick introduction about myself. My name's Nicholas Lapité. I am the CEO and founder of a company called the Genesis Projekt, but I'm also working across a number of other companies as well. The Genesis Projekt is really focused on sustainable energy and how we create better solutions for our energy infrastructure going forward. And it's really to kind of help to build a more robust and resilient and cost-effective energy infrastructure. So the purpose for today, and I've kind of done this deliberately, I'm not going to share any slides. I'm not going to sort of throw lots of statistics and data at you. It's really, even though it's a virtual thing, it's really, I really want to just give a talk, get you to take some notes, encourage you to take some notes, and then, I welcome you to ask any questions when I finish. I think it's important for you to kind of listen to what I'm saying rather than trying to read what's on the screen. And then we can have a bit more of a, let's say, a virtual dialogue at the end. So I've been thinking a lot about sustainable energy. And are we going in the right direction with the technologies that we're investing in? So I want you to just have a think about this for a second, okay? We know that fossil fuels are not working for us, okay? But what is? In 2021, 2022, the global infrastructure energy spend was about 1.6 trillion pounds, okay? So just let that sink in for a second. 1.6 trillion pounds, okay? And the two key sectors that most of that investment goes to is wind and solar. Okay, so I'm going to kind of break down those two technologies into a little bit more detail so we can really understand, as entrepreneurs, as investors, are we really focused on the right things, and are they actually going to help us to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves as a global community? Okay, so let's think about solar for a second. The sun shines pretty much all the time in a number of places around the world, okay? So it kind of makes sense to set up a solar farm, put solar panels on roofs of buildings, homes, etc. It seems to make sense, okay? But the total life cycle of a solar panel maybe isn't that beneficial, okay? What we're focused on primarily as investors, as founders, is what I call the point of presentation of the technology, okay? So by that, I mean, the solar panel goes on the roof, that's the point of presentation. The solar panel is in a solar farm, that's the point of presentation. And at that point, in that section of the product's life cycle, it's great. You're harnessing the energy from the sun. The energy from the sun is free. It's abundant. Fantastic. So we've got this almost mutual exchange going on between the sun and our solar panels. And this is fantastic, right? We've got free energy. It's clean. It's perfect. Great solution to replace fossil fuels. But then if you think about how that solar panel got to where it is in the first place, okay, this is what I call the upstream events, okay? So let's have a look at maybe some of those and just think about some of those. How do you make a solar panel? What's a solar panel constructed of? Is the production process powered by solar energy or another renewable source? And I think if you dig deep enough, you will find that as well as having to harvest rare earth minerals within an industry that maybe doesn't have the best safety record or human rights record, right down to the amount of power that's actually required to make solar panels, okay, you'll find that it's actually a lot of the plants that within the process of constructing the solar panel, they're powered by fossil fuel electricity, okay? So even though it seems like a good idea, the solar panel, its journey from beginning to point of presentation still relies heavily on fossil fuels, okay? Overall, the sustainable energy industry, or the renewable energy industry, only makes up probably about 20% of the global energy mix, okay? Now, you've got 8 billion people on the planet. There's roughly 1 billion people recorded that don't have access to electricity at all, okay? So that's the ones that we know about, and that's for a number of reasons. It could be because they're in geographical locations that are, that are just hard to reach, or these current, these new technologies, whether it's hydroelectric, geothermal, solar panels, or wind, just won't be able to be installed where they are. Okay, so that's a significant portion of the global population doesn't have access to electricity. 8 billion people, and at present, the global energy mix is only 20% roughly made up of renewable technologies. Okay, so you've got this seemingly good idea that's hugely reliant on fossil fuel generated energy to enable us to have clean energy from the sun, but we're still only providing 20%, and it's not just from solar, obviously, but we're still only providing 20% of renewable energy for renewable electricity from renewable sources. Okay, so you can see a little bit of the problem beginning to take shape here. Okay, how do we move from 20% reliance on renewable energy to 100%? We had to take out, to remove fossil fuels completely from the energy mix completely. We would need to, exponentially increase the production of these renewable technologies and the installation and implementation, and make sure that the infrastructure, there is sufficient infrastructure in place to serve not only the developed economies, but to reach everybody. Okay, and that is a problem. So this got me thinking, okay, as entrepreneurs, as investors, are we really, truly focused on the right thing? Okay. So now imagine now that we've got these solar panels and we decide, okay, we're going to build a solar farm. What are the other impacts that are going to take place here? The obvious one is space. Okay. A solar farm takes up a lot of space. Okay. I'm going to give you a rough statistic, but if you wanted to power London, okay, the city of London, just by solar power or wind power, you would need a solar farm or a wind farm bigger than the size of London. Okay, so where's that going to go? Okay, these are the things that I believe we're not thinking about. I believe we're not talking about enough, and I think they need to be considered. Again, as founders, as innovators, as entrepreneurs, a lot of what we're doing is driven towards this energy transition, this decarbonization, looking at initiatives that are really focused on green technologies and green solutions. But if they're intrinsically tied to these current technologies such as wind, solar, hydroelectric, etc., maybe that's not the direction that we need to be looking at. I think we are called, and we should be expected to be looking at the bigger picture, to take a much more holistic view of what are the things that we're developing and what is the total impact that these things are going to have long term. Because it's not just about, okay, the goal is reduce our carbon footprint by this amount in this time frame. That's a noble goal, and it's an important goal. Okay, but if that goal comes at the expense of creating problems elsewhere, then it's not really a solution, is it? A solution should take into consideration its entire impact and make sure that at the very least 90% of its impact is positive today and in the future. Okay, so again, you're going to build a solar farm, you're going to build a wind farm. It takes up a huge amount of land. Now that land has to come from somewhere. Okay, it has to come from, nature, wildlife. They're obviously giving up something in order for us to have, these solar panels go in or these wind farms to go in. It could be coming from people, could be land that's used for housing, for farmland, for a number of other things, but we put these solar panels there. Okay. And I don't, I've spent a lot of time looking at this and talking to a number of stakeholders in, solar professionals, wind farm professionals, and they're a little bit short-sighted, that I found. And this is this is just my opinion. It's a bit of maybe it's a bit of a generalization, but they're a little bit short-sighted because it's just we are literally just building solutions for today. Okay, and that won't work. What we have been doing, I'm just going to tell you a little bit more about what we've been doing at the Genesis Projekt. What we wanted to do was to look at ways of generating energy without having any impact at all on the environment, on the way people live, on the way things function. Okay, I'm going to just give you a little bit of information about the product that we are developing. So we've developed something called the Kinetic Energy Harvester. Okay, and essentially what that is, it's a nanotechnology membrane that can be embedded into any surface that people move over. So whether that's a road, a sidewalk, a floor inside a building. Okay, and it will capture the energy generated by people's movement over that surface and convert it into electricity. Okay, so the immediate win there is that it doesn't take up any additional space. Okay, goes into the existing floor print of the urban environment, and it just actively generates. As long as there's people moving, electricity is going to be generated. Okay, now it's not a brand new technology. Our approach is new, but it's not a brand new technology. But the concept is to, it was really driven by how do we reach people everywhere. Okay, solar panels can't go everywhere. If the sun isn't shining enough, then they're ineffective. Okay, but the people will still have to live their life. They still have to go to work, still have to go to school, they still have to move around their homes and so on. Okay, so in every situation, solar doesn't work. And it's the same for wind, and it's the same for hydroelectric and geothermal. Okay, in every situation, they don't work. Maybe combined, they could work, but again, it comes down to a major issue of space with those technologies. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that our product will be the thing that will change the world, but I believe that direction of thinking is what I would encourage every entrepreneur, every investor to really look at. How can we genuinely build solutions that are not going to have any negative impacts at all? Now, it's not the easiest thing, obviously, because one, it takes longer. Okay, it takes a lot longer, requires probably a lot more investment if you're trying to create something that's completely new, a completely new environment, a completely new approach that's going to change a lot of things. But that's okay, right? Because even if it does take a little bit longer, you're saving the next generation a lot of problems. Okay. Now I want to just have a little bit of a deeper dive into the technology within the solar panel. Okay. So it would make sense, right, that if we want to generate a huge amount of electricity from solar, for example, why don't we just stick solar panels in the desert, in the Australian outback, just somewhere where the sun is always shining, it's super, super hot. There's limitations to solar panels, okay? Designed to capture the energy of the sun, but if it's too hot, then they become incredibly inefficient, okay? They're only about 30% efficient anyway, energy efficient, okay? So that means that 70% of the energy that they capture is lost. Okay, so if you put them in an environment where they become even more inefficient, that's a huge space cost. It's a huge time cost to maybe recuperate only maybe 15-20% of the energy that they produce. Now, over their lifespan, the cells start to degrade anyway, so they become less efficient over their lifetime. And then you will arrive in 20-25 years time with a solar farm or an array of solar panels on your roof or wherever that need to be decommissioned and they need to be changed out. Okay. So what happens after, when the solar panels come to the end of their life, that's what I call the downstream effect. Okay. And, based on today's statistics, we only can recycle we're only recycling about 5% of, or it's less than 10% of solar panels. Okay. So the infrastructure isn't even in place to actively recycle this technology. And yet we're putting so much investment into it without asking the question, what happens in 25 years time when we've got a ton of solar panels which don't work anymore? Okay. So not only will you have acres and acres and acres and acres of dead stock, you've also got a significant cost to decommission and recommission a site, assuming that when you take the existing, say, solar farm offline, you're going to fully take it offline before bringing a new one online. Now that's not going to happen. So you essentially, if you're decommissioning a space, you have to have another space running basically adjacent to it that comes online when the other one goes offline. So you're doubling the amount of space and the cost. So you see, when we really, really think about the direction that we're going, it seems good now, and it's cool now, it makes sense now. But there is a future, and some of us will be a part of that future, and our children will be a part of that future. And we're just really passing the buck. Okay. And that, I don't personally think, is acceptable. I think as a business person, as an entrepreneur, if you're going to venture into this world of innovation, then you have to think about the long-term effects. You have to take a holistic view of whatever it is that you're doing. Okay. Yes, it makes sense that we need to fix today's problems as soon as possible, but not at the cost of creating greater problems in the future. Okay. Now, I mean, I've spoken about solar a lot, but it's a similar story with wind turbines. With both wind and solar, you need optimal conditions all the time for them to generate what they say they can generate on the tin. Okay. If you don't have those conditions, then what you're really creating is a hugely unstable energy infrastructure. Because if you imagine that we get rid of fossil fuels altogether, okay, and we're just reliant on wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, and nuclear as well. Nuclear, stable. The rest, not so stable, because they're based on unpredictable sources. Okay. And so what does that mean? How can you build communities? How can you build business? How can you build environments that are, that rely on energy to function when the energy sources are not consistent? Okay. So if I just come back to the product that we're developing, people, you and I, are creatures of habit. Okay. We go to work, go to school, we go meet our friends, we go and do things. Okay. Our patterns of behavior are relatively consistent and predictable. Okay. So let's say we've got a train station, 1,000 people go to work in one direction, 1,000 people are probably going to come home in the opposite direction. Okay. So a product like ours, or, and I'm not, forget a product like ours, thinking like we're thinking. Okay. If you install a product like ours in an area where people are going to go one way and they're going to come back the other way, pretty much, you've suddenly got a predictable framework then, because every impression over that surface will generate X amount of energy. And if you know how many people have gone one way and you know how many people are roughly going to come back, then you can predict, not just today, not just tomorrow, but way into the future, how much energy can be generated from a particular installation in a particular place. And I think that's the kind of thinking that we need to adopt as investors, as entrepreneurs, as creators, because we need to be thinking about, do you know what are the problems? It's not just decarbonization, it's energy security, it's the energy costs. There are a number of things, okay, that we should be thinking about that aren't spoken about enough. They're not spoken about enough in the news, in the media, and so on. Everything is so focused on carbon emissions. That's just one part of the problem that we need to solve. Okay, you've got communities in so-called developed economies that also don't have access to electricity, that also suffer from blackouts and things like that. And it's, how do you eliminate those situations from happening? Again, if we look at our approach, and to develop the type of product which we are working on at the moment, what we'll move from and towards is we'll move away from a centralized energy production system to a decentralized one. So essentially every installation that we have will be, it will exist in its own sort of microcosm. Okay, if you imagine you have a building, an office building, and we have energy harvesters on every floor, that building will generate the power that it needs for itself, okay, just by the movement of people within and around the building. Now, if there's an event that happens, I don't know, at the local power station, that building will still be able to function independent of the power station. Now, if you've got multiple buildings in the same area, or wherever, across a town, across a city, wherever, multiple buildings that all have harvesters installed in them, they're all able to generate the energy that they need and potentially more, then it doesn't matter what happens. If there's a flood, if there's an earthquake, if there's some unsavory event that takes place, it's not going to completely leave the whole environment in the dark. Maybe it's going to affect a building here, a building there, a street here, a street there, but it's not going to leave everyone in the dark. Okay, and so these are parts of, these are important problems that need to be solved. Okay, and so again, I'm talking about the product that we're developing, but it's for everybody. It's for everybody that's in that entrepreneurial space, that's focused on innovation. We have to think bigger than the immediate problem, because the immediate problem is just it's the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Or it's just a part of the iceberg poking out from a vast ocean of other problems, which also are significant, and to an extent are probably more significant because they have a longer lasting and deeper impact on a more regular basis. Okay, we don't necessarily see the effects, or I say we, the majority of people don't necessarily see the effects of carbon emissions, as it were. Okay, they don't necessarily see that, but they do see and feel the effects of blackouts. Yeah, they do feel the effects of living in a community that has no access to electricity. Yeah, so what the one thing I stress, and I know I've said it probably a number of times, think of the bigger picture. Okay, and this is for investors as well. Investors want to make money, right? They want a good return on whatever investment they make. They want limited risk, and that's understandable. I would be the same. I have a certain risk appetite, and I'd like to see things happen in a certain time frame. But at the same time, if you make the right investments in the right things that are going to have the desired impact and more, isn't that a better choice? Isn't that a better choice? Because I think it is. For the entrepreneurs, again, if you're going to develop a technology or any kind of solution, tool, whatever it is, that's based on, let's say, the solar industry or some other kind of industry that's seemingly makes sense now, look into the entire life cycle of what it is that you're building your business around. Okay, can you make something that changes everything? Like most people don't want to do that because it's scary. It's like, oh, it's a bit daunting and so on. But you know, this is the point of being an innovator, right? This is the point of being an entrepreneur. It's about pushing boundaries. It's about taking risks. It's about going further than the people that came before us, because the people that came before us have left us in the situation that we're in, right? And now we're scrambling all over the world to try and find solutions to fix problems with plastic and energy and, you know, a myriad of things. So why don't we try and go a step further? Yeah, why don't we think a little bit more about, or a little bit deeper in terms of the products, the solutions, the businesses that we're trying to build now? Okay, yes, we want to do something that's successful today, but let's think more about tomorrow and the tomorrows after that and the tomorrows after that. Okay, because, you know, maybe it's not important, but you don't want your legacy to be, well, we tried, but, you know, the world kind of went up in flames anyway. How about you have your legacy be, we tried and changed this, and it changed everything. Yeah. We don't have to change the world. Like, I'm not saying go and change the world, try and develop something that changes everything in the world. No, but do something that changes something significant in the world that makes the future and today better, because that's our job. Otherwise, we're just perpetuating this cycle of win today, problem tomorrow, win today, problem tomorrow. Tomorrow is our problem as well. Okay, tomorrow is our problem as well, and we need to take care of